compile it, it'll get it the way you want it to. Okay. And then here's the big question, right? Which is Slidify versus RStudio Presenter. And I was a little surprised when I first saw RStudio Presenter because it has a lot of overlap with Slidify, and so my first question was why do these two things exist? Why not just either one group or the other just adopt the other one? So here's my impression. So Slidify to me gives you a lot more kind of more flexible control from the R Markdown file. So you have a ton kind of more just options as you play around with the R Markdown file, or in RStudio Presenter is what is called the rPres file. And it's really undergoing constant rapid development. Ramnath is a madman, and he is constantly developing it. It has a large user base, which means like there's lots of questions answered on Stack Exchange, and Ramnath seems to jump on Stack Exchange almost immediately. And he put in lots of styles and options by default. So you have all the different HTML5 slide decks are basically included, and you can do them all fairly easily. It has a much steeper learning curve to go from 0 to functional in Slidify, a much steeper learning curve. And I would describe it as more kind of command line oriented. RStudio Presenter is much more integrated within RStudio, and it's probably preferable to work with the RStudio GUI. So the RStudio Presenter is embedded in RStudio, which is a good and a bad thing. If you're more of a command line person, you probably maybe want the kind of way in which Slidify is implemented a little bit more, though I'm confident there's probably a way you can do most of the RStudio things from the command line as well. But I think of it as more GUI oriented. RStudio Presenter is ridiculously easy to get started. I basically knew nothing and created this presentation and lecture in one day. And one thing that struck me about RStudio Presenter relative to Slidify was how easy it was to learn. Now, to be fair, I knew Slidify first, and so I had a lot of knowledge to build on, but just my impression of the software is that it is extremely easy to use. And part of the reason it's easy to use is it has a much smaller set of kind of canonical styles and options, right? So it's this kind of paradox of choice type thing where we actually are a little bit happier if we have less choice. It's how the Apple Store works, right? They give you relatively few choices, and it turns out people are happier if they have fewer choices, or so that's the lore. I don't know if that's true at all. But at any rate, this makes me happy that there's fewer choices, because I'm the kind of person that if there's lots of choices, I tinker around with them, and then I look, and then it's like an hour later and I've done nothing. Okay, so this smaller set of styles it actually helps people like me that are over tinkerers. As far as I'm concerned, the default style looks really nice, and so I wouldn't, it seems fine. So that's actually a nice component of RStudio Presenter. And either with RStudio Presenter or Slidify, remember, ultimately, all this is using R as a front end to create an HTML5 slide deck. So if you have a little CSS or HTML knowledge, you can make either RStudio Presenter or Slidify as elaborate as you'd like. And the big step is deciding that you want a reproducible presentation with R embedded in your presentation building software, and then I think either of these solutions will work quite well.